All right, want to bring in right now criminal defense attorney Regina Tsombanakis from Florida. She is a former public defender in Orlando and Broward County. Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, Patrick Warren's attorneys in this trial are also public defenders. They do so much good in this country for representing so many. But here's one of the first questions that I want to ask you. You know, as we listen to the closing argument in the penalty phase from the prosecutor, it's very narrowly focused. The heinous, atrocious, and cruel they are really focusing on, but it's a very narrow focus right at the point of when the shots begin. Does that make this a death penalty case?
I don't believe so. I don't believe this even should have gotten this far. The law defining what heat of passion is so unrealistic when you look at what a human being goes through during that period of time. And in this case, with Mr. Warren, he's now actually having to go through whether or not he's going to be put to death or not. He never had an act of violence in this manner before in his life. This was provoked, and that is why the heat of passion should have came in, and it should have been a different verdict. And most certainly, it should not be a death penalty.
What do you think would have made it, we're in the penalty phase now, but since you brought it up, what do you think would have made it a manslaughter verdict? What was missing either with the facts or with the defense case?
I think what was missing was they needed to focus a lot more on the daily mental anguish that Mr. Warren was going through by watching his wife cavort across the street with an 19-year-old while thinking of, where is this daughter she made up? Is this true? Where is this person? This plays on the mind. This was quite an elaborate ruse that Kelly Warren played on her husband, making up a daughter who inexplicably doesn't live with them, but the boyfriend does. This needs to be taken into context when you're going to trial, when you're putting it to the jury. Have them understand that this builds up, and at that point, when it explodes, to be held responsible in the same way as if you sat and thought out and planned out a murder is not right. It's just not fair.
You know, I think one thing that stands out in this case as you think about everything is the fact you think it's right across the street. She moves out and lives right across the street. Of course, that's the other home that they owned, so that is why she went there. But it's an interesting thought to put more in the jury's mind, the realism, the facts, the day-to-day facts. Let's look at this penalty phase for a minute. I've seen a lot of penalty phases. I've seen them very good. I've seen them very, very poor. How rich do you think this penalty phase is as the defense is trying to show those mitigators that this is a life to be saved, so the jury can understand maybe why Patrick Warren is the way he is or was the way he was?
Well, I think what the state is doing is they're putting everything into this little tunnel of time, into this just one little period of time, and is telling the jury, forget the rest. You forget what happened before. Look at this, and look at this only. And that isn't right. They need to look at more than that, especially when deciding whether or not somebody should live or die. To ignore all the mitigating factors and simply go on the aggravating factors, which, again, we believe, or I do believe on the defense side, that show that this was not a premeditated crime, but rather one committed in quite a reckless manner and because of sudden provocation. That needs to be brought out, and the state's argument needs to be countered with, no, don't just look at this few minutes in time. Look at the whole picture. Look at more than that.
How much strength do you think there was with all the brothers taking the stand of Patrick Warren's to talk about the background, to talk about the alleged abuse in their home? Of course, the prosecution is calling it discipline, but can that give the jury empathy when it comes to life or death?
It can, and it can also give them an understanding of why Mr. Warren is the way he is, why his reactions were the way he were. Why didn't he comport with the law? Why didn't he stop and say, wait a minute, what am I doing? Well, maybe it's because of his upbringing. If you're not giving those tools while you're growing up, how can you possibly exercise them later on in life? And I think that it did help in giving the jury a bigger picture of who this man was and why he reacted the way he was and why he wasn't able to handle being humiliated every day by his wife across the street in his community as as the law thinks he should have handled it.
Of course, the reality is there is an automatic, in a sense, aggravator here. It is a prior capital felony since this is a double murder. So this penalty phase can go either way, easily. It can go either way. Regina Tsombanakis, thank you so much. We're going to talk to you in a little bit.
Sure, thank you.